When she first stepped through the gates of Fort Haven Training Center, no one looked twice. Dressed in a faded gray t-shirt, worn cargo pants, and boots that had clearly seen better days, she looked more like a camp kitchen assistant than a cadet. Her name was Evelyn Carter, and everything about her screamed out of place. Her hair was tied in a low knot, tucked under a fraying ball cap. No makeup, no polish, no insignia or name tag on her shirt. Just a small, patched-up backpack slung over one shoulder, the strap barely holding together. A group of young recruits, mostly fresh out of college, turned their heads as she passed. One of them, a tall blonde girl with a perfect ponytail and even more perfect smirk, muttered under her breath, "What is this community outreach day?" The others laughed. A second voice chimed in, "Bet she's here on some diversity initiative." Evelyn didn't look at them. She just walked on. The first drill of the day was a lineup on the training field. Captain Dalton, a man built like a tank with a voice that could rattle walls, paced back and forth in front of the new recruits. "Let's see what we've got this round," he bellowed. His eyes swept the row and landed directly on Evelyn. His lip curled slightly. "You there civilian laundry services are that way," he barked, pointing toward the supply tents. The recruits erupted into laughter. Evelyn didn't flinch. "I'm Cadet Carter, sir," she said calmly. Dalton narrowed his eyes. "Cadet? Really? Fine. Hope you brought running shoes, Grandma." Another burst of laughter. Evelyn just nodded once and stepped into formation. During their first group meal, the mess hall buzzed with excitement and noise. Evelyn sat quietly at an empty table in the corner, calmly spooning mashed potatoes into her mouth. That's when a young man named Travis, the unofficial alpha of the group, strutted over and dropped his tray across from her with a bang. "This table's for soldiers," he grinned. "You sure you're not here to mop the floors?" Evelyn paused, set her fork down, and looked at him with level eyes. "I'm here to eat," she said. Travis chuckled and flicked his spoon, sending a glob of gravy onto her shirt. "Oops!" Evelyn wiped the mess with a napkin. Her hands were slow, deliberate. She didn't say a word, just kept eating. Later, during the first warm-up circuit, her pace was steady, her breathing controlled, but her boots kept slipping, the laces fraying more with each sprint. One recruit called out, "Hey, thrift store, your shoes quitting on you or just trying to escape?" Another bump, another stumble into the mud. Still, she said nothing. She tied her boots and kept running. After the endurance test, they were given a short break. Evelyn sat on a wooden bench beneath a tree, peeling open a granola bar. The same blonde girl from earlier Madison, with her arms crossed and two giggling cadets at her side, walked up and tilted her head. "So," she said sweetly, "what's your story, Grandma? Win a raffle, charity case?" Evelyn took a slow bite of her granola bar, chewing thoughtfully before answering. "I applied," she said. Her voice was as flat and firm as asphalt. Madison's smile tightened. "Okay, but why?" She gestured to Evelyn's plain clothes. "You don't exactly scream elite." Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her stare was enough to make Madison take a half step back. As the day wore on, things escalated. At the equipment shed, Evelyn stood in line with the others to receive her gear. The quartermaster, a grumpy man with a scar running down his cheek, looked her over and scoffed. "Wrong line, sweetheart," he grunted. "This gear's for soldiers." Evelyn held his gaze. He tossed her a vest, 2 sizes too big. "Use it as a tent if it doesn't fit." The recruits behind her chuckled, whispering. Evelyn took the vest without a word. Outside, she tied it tight with a few clean knots. It fit like a glove when she was done. The next day, during a punishing 10-mile terrain run, Evelyn kept pace despite a twisted ankle. At the halfway point, Madison accidentally nudged her elbow, sending her tumbling off the track. Captain Dalton roared, "Cadet Carter! Broke formation! Squad loses points!" The group groaned, eyes full of contempt. "Thanks, Carter. Way to tank the whole team," Travis sneered. Still no words. She rose, limped, kept running. 5 laps extra. No water. Just silence. Just endurance. That night, under a wash of flares in a simulated enemy drill, another cadet named Brent yanked a rope from Evelyn's hands and tossed it into the mud. "You tying knots, Grandma? Or knitting scarves?" As the group cackled, Evelyn picked up the rope and tied it again. Slower this time, cleaner. He tried to stomp mud on her hands. She didn't flinch. She just asked, "You done?" Even he had no response. No one knew why she was there. No one knew who she really was. But slowly, something began to shift. It wasn't her words because she hardly said any. It was the way she moved. The way her hands never shook. The way her silence carried weight. No one knew it yet, but they were standing in the presence of someone who'd been forged in fire far deeper than any of them had ever known. And they were about to find out the hard way. Day 3. The cadets had begun to settle into their routines: push-ups at dawn, drills till dusk, mud-caked boots, and egos stretched thin. Evelyn Carter still hadn't raised her voice. She still hadn't raised a fist, but she was becoming harder to ignore. The transformation didn't come with noise, it came with precision. During the rifle disassembly challenge, the instructors barked the rules: break down, clean, and reassemble an M4 carbine in under 2 minutes. Most cadets fumbled. Some dropped pins into the dirt. Even Travis, the overconfident loudmouth, barely finished with seconds to spare his weapon assembled, but rattling with loose tension. Evelyn stepped forward with no announcement. Her hands moved with calm certainty. Click, slide, pop, clean rag, swipe, reassemble. Her parts were laid out in a grid that looked more surgical than tactical. She wasn't fast, she was flawless. 52 seconds. 0 errors. Sergeant Moore, who'd seen thousands of cadets pass through Fort Haven, narrowed his eyes. "Where'd you learn that?" he muttered. Evelyn just said, "Practice." The instructor clicked his stopwatch again. "Not practice," he whispered. "That's Special Forces muscle memory." Behind her, the recruits were silent. Even Madison. Even Travis. But it wasn't over. Later that afternoon, a navigation drill sent the cadets into the wooded ridges surrounding the base. Each was given a map, and compass get lost, and your team paid the price. Evelyn moved alone, her steps sure, eyes scanning the tree line like she was reading a second language written in shadows. Then came the test. A wiry, jealous cadet named Brentiching to earn points with, Travis spotted her crouched under a pine, double-checking bearings. He swaggered over, ripped the map from her hands, and tore it in two. "Let's see you navigate now, Grandma," he grinned. Evelyn stared as the scraps fluttered away in the breeze. She didn't chase them. She didn't raise her voice. She looked Brent in the eyes and said calmly, "Hope you know your way back." Then she walked off. No panic, no protest, just quiet purpose. That night, the whispers began. Elena, one of the more observant cadets, leaned over to her bunkmate. "Have you seen her shoot yet? Or fight?" "No," the girl replied. "But did you notice? Her hands don't shake. Not ever." The next day, Evelyn lined up for the long-range shooting test. 5 shots, 400 meters, wind cross, no corrections allowed. Madison went first. 3 shots landed, 2 missed wildly. She cursed and stomped away. Travis went next. 4 decent shots, 1 wide miss. He flexed his jaw and claimed the sight was off. Then came Evelyn. She laid prone, adjusted nothing, and breathed deep. 5 shots, 5 perfect bullseyes. The range officer paused, leaned forward to check the target again. Cadet Carter, perfect score. A colonel watching from the side furrowed his brow. "That's not luck," he murmured to his aide. "That's deliberate." It got worse for the doubters. During the post-drill inspection, her rifle was found to have a misaligned scope B at least half an inch. "She adjusted by instinct," said the technician. "Or memory. Either way, that's not beginner stuff." Whispers turned to stares, and the stares turned to doubt not in Evelyn, but in themselves. Travis tried to shake it off. "Big deal. She can aim. Doesn't mean she can fight." But not everyone agreed. Eleanor approached Evelyn quietly during a water break and slipped a clean map into her hands. "Yours got torn," she whispered. "I thought maybe you might still want one." Evelyn gave a small nod. "Thanks." That was it. No grand speech. Just the kind of moment that sticks to a person's memory like wet gravel on boots. The real shift came during the combat simulation briefing. An instructor, Major Delaney, was demonstrating perimeter defense layouts on a whiteboard when she called on Evelyn, almost dismissively. "You in the back? You drawing? Or daydreaming?" Evelyn looked up. "Your left flank is exposed," she said calmly. "Too far from the fallback point. A team of 4 could breach it before your second squad rotated." Delaney blinked. "Explain." Evelyn stood, walked up to the diagram, and resketched the angle. "Repost your scouts here. Add motion sensors here. This buys you another minute, in the event of an ambush." Silence. Delaney stared at the revised map, then nodded slowly. That's correct. A few cadets exchanged wide-eyed glances. Madison rolled her eyes, but Delaney's voice snapped like a whip. She just saved your hypothetical lives. Maybe listen next time. No one laughed. Later that night, Evelyn sat alone under the soft hum of the barrack lights. She reached into her pack and pulled out an old photo creased and faded. A younger version of herself stood beside a tall man in a black jacket. His face was half-shadowed, unidentifiable, but his posture rigid, commanding radiated power. She traced her thumb over the photo, her mouth tight, her silence louder than ever. That's when Elena, from 2 bunks down, asked gently, "Who trained you?" Evelyn looked at her but didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, "Someone who never needed to shout to be heard." And with that, she slid the photo back into her bag and lay back in silence. The camp had no idea what was coming. But they were about to find out. Combat Simulation Day. The cadets buzzed with nervous energy as names were paired off for the one-on-one sparring round. The rules were simple: no weapons, no mercy. First to submit or get pinned loses. Evelyn Carter's name was called. Opponent, Travis Cole. The yard broke into whispers. Travis, taller by a head and twice as loud, cracked his knuckles with a grin. "You sure you're up for this, Grandma?" he jeered. "You bruise easy?" Evelyn said nothing. She stepped onto the mat with that same quiet resolve, her expression unreadable. The whistle blew. Travis charged. He grabbed her by the collar, lifted her clear off her feet, and slammed her into the wooden spar wall with a thud that made several cadets flinch. Her shirt tore in the back from shoulder to waist fabric, shredding under the force. The yard erupted in laughter. "Guess she's tougher than she looks," one snorted. "Wait," another voice cracked. "Is that?" A hush fell. From beneath the ripped fabric, etched deep in black ink across Evelyn's upper back, was a tattoo, a coiled viper wrapped around a shattered skull. The linework was jagged but precise. The kind of ink you didn't get from a parlor. No one spoke. Then came a voice. Not from the recruits, not from Travis. From Colonel Beretta, a man known for never flinching, never blinking. His boots hit the gravel as he stepped forward from the sideline, eyes locked on that tattoo like he'd seen a ghost. His voice cracked slightly when he asked, "Who gave you the right to wear that mark?" Evelyn turned, her shirt hanging loosely at her sides, revealing the full emblem. "I didn't ask for it," she said evenly. "It was given." "By whom?" the colonel pressed, his throat tight. "Ghost Viper," she said. "I trained under him 6 years." Gasps spread across the yard like wildfire. Several cadets turned pale. Even the instructors looked rattled. Colonel Barrett stiffened. Then he saluted. A sharp, perfect, formal salute. To a cadet, Travis staggered back, his grip on her shirt gone limp. "Wait, you?" Behind him, Madison took an unconscious step backward, her hand trembling. One of the junior officers whispered, "No one bears that tattoo, unless they're his final student." The rest of the recruits froze. Everything they thought they knew about Evelyn shattered in an instant. Captain Dalton, who had mocked her just days, walked forward slowly, his face unreadable. "Effective immediately," he said, his voice flat. "Cadet Evelyn Carter is designated honorary instructor. You will treat her as such. You will learn from her." No one protested. No one dared. Evelyn didn't nod, didn't thank him. She just pulled her shirt closed, grabbed her backpack, and walked away as the cadets parted in stunned silence. That evening, the mess hall was a different place. Quiet, respectful. Even the sound of trays clinking seemed more subdued. Evelyn sat alone, but not isolated. People glanced at her, unsure whether to speak, but knowing better than to mock. Then something unexpected happened. An unfamiliar black SUV pulled up outside the barracks. Colonel Barrett stepped out and adjusted his uniform as the door to the passenger seat opened. A man emerged tall, broad-shouldered, clean-cut with steely grey eyes and a calm intensity that immediately shifted the air around him. He wasn't in uniform, just black jeans and a nondescript jacket, but the moment the guard saw him, he snapped to attention. Inside, whispers raced. The name rippled through the ranks like thunder. General Thomas Reed, the most decorated living officer in U.S. Joint Special Operations. He said nothing as he stepped into the yard, just nodded once to Colonel Barrett. Then his eyes locked on Evelyn. She stepped forward, slow, composed. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. He gave the smallest hint of a smile. "Yeah," he said. "I did." Gasps again. Madison dropped her water bottle, the sound loud in the silence. Colonel Barrett turned to the group and addressed them calmly. "This is General Reed," he said. Then added, almost too softly, "her husband." The cadets looked like they'd been struck with lightning. General Reed didn't linger. He placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. Then the two of them walked back toward the SUV. The engine rumbled to life, dust lifting in the hot evening air as they drove away, quiet, final. No one moved until the vehicle was out of sight. And even then, no one dared speak first. Back in the review chamber, where base commanders discussed performance records and evaluations, Evelyn Carter's name came up again. A junior officer, unaware of the events in the yard, scoffed. "Honestly, she doesn't speak, she doesn't lead. I recommend cutting her." Colonel Barrett leaned forward, eyes like steel. "Cadet Carter's file is classified," he said. "But I'll tell you this, she's the only one here who could have run this camp blindfolded." He slid a sealed envelope across the table, a black Viper emblem stamped across the wax seal. "Evaluations, from Ghost Viper himself," he added. "You want leadership? Read this." The officer opened the envelope. His face went pale. The room fell silent as he read line after line. They'd never doubted a cadet like this before, and they'd never forget her again. Fort Haven was never the same after she left. Her name, Evelyn Carter, remained on the instructor roster, but the chair she once sat in during briefings stayed empty. Her boots never echoed in the drill yard again. Her soft voice never interrupted another flawed tactical layout. But her presence lingered, heavily, quietly, like a fingerprint on every wall. She hadn't asked for recognition. She didn't demand an apology from anyone. When she walked away beside General Thomas Reed, she did it with the same calm she'd carried from day one. She had nothing to prove. And now, they all knew why. The aftermath came quickly. A week after Evelyn's departure, a video surfaced online blurry, shaky but unmistakable. It showed Madison sneering, tossing that half-eaten apple onto Evelyn's tray. Her voice was crystal clear. "You need strength to carry our bags." The video hit military forums first, then veteran groups, then national news. Madison's defense contractor sponsored the very company who had funded her place at the camp pulled her contract within 48 hours. She packed up her belongings that night. She didn't say goodbye. Travis Cole's reassignment to a desk in North Dakota was meant to be quiet, but the internal review that followed wasn't. His entire record was audited. Words like conduct unbecoming and abuse of peer cadets followed him into permanent dishonor. Others weren't formally punished, but their shame ran deeper than paperwork. The cadets who laughed, who flicked food, who whispered cruel jokes and called her grandma, they now trained harder but moved differently, more cautious, more aware. When instructors corrected them, they listened. When someone sat alone in the mess hall, no one dared point. Because now, everyone knew. You never really know who's sitting next to you. One evening during a quiet cleanup, Elena found something tucked beneath a bunk, a photo creased and weathered. Evelyn, much younger, stood beside a tall, shadowed figure in black. His eyes were hidden, but his posture was unmistakable. Elena held it up. Who was she really? She asked no one in particular. Nobody answered, not even the instructors. She slid the photo into her journal. She didn't know why, but it felt like it mattered. Outside the gates of Fort Haven, the ripples kept spreading. The contractor who cut Madison faced weeks of PR nightmares. Their stock dropped. Their media team scrambled to contain backlash. Support for the woman with the Viper tattoo surged across social media. Hashtags like #SilentSteel and #ViperMarked trended for days. Even retired veterans began sharing stories of other soldiers like Evelyn quiet, underestimated, ignored until one day they weren't. Captain Dalton changed too. He didn't announce it, but those closest to him noticed. His yelling softened, his sarcasm dulled. He watched recruits more carefully, not just for performance, but for resilience. And every morning, before roll call, he glanced once toward the empty spot Evelyn used to stand, like he was still waiting for her. And Evelyn? Some said she was back with General Reed running a black site training program somewhere off-grid. Others swore they saw her boarding a transport at Andrews Air Force Base destination unknown. But no one really knew. She disappeared the same way she arrived, without fanfare, without explanation, without needing to be seen. Only one thing remained her story. Passed down like a secret between bunkmates, whispered during late-night shifts, told in quiet awe between recruits with tired eyes. Not as a myth, not as legend, but as truth. And the lesson she left behind? It wasn't written in any handbook. It wasn't yelled from a podium. It lived in the silence she commanded. In the way power doesn't always roar, it can whisper. In how respect isn't demanded, it's earned. In how real strength doesn't need to announce itself. In the final week of the program, Elena was tasked with training a new batch of cadets. As they gathered at the perimeter line, one wide-eyed recruit asked, "Ma'am, is it true about the woman with the viper tattoo?" Elena smiled slightly. "She never told us much," she said, "but she taught us everything." The recruit paused, unsure how to respond. "Why did she never stay to teach?" he asked. Elena looked down the ridge, toward the tree line Evelyn used to disappear into. "Because some lessons," she whispered, "aren't meant to be taught, they're meant to be remembered. Greatness doesn't wear a badge, it doesn't scream for attention. It moves quietly through mud, through pain, through doubt until the world has no choice but to listen." Evelyn Carter never needed to raise her voice, because her silence echoed louder than any shout ever could. Have you ever met someone who changed everything without ever needing to say a word? Share their story below.